and welcome to The Point. And this is Dr. Laura with Dr. Richard Kent, who has been taking us through some really exciting programs. The last couple of programs, we've been talking about the 6 days of creation. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
I'm so looking forward to this program. We're going to do a recap on day 3. And in day 3, we talked about the dry land and plants. And we've got a fun facts to go through straight away and just to expand on photosynthesis. See you back soon.
Hello, my name's Richard Kent. Today I wanted to talk about photosynthesis. In all the plants and all the algae in the sea, everywhere we look at the beautiful countryside, we look at the trees, the flowers, and we think, isn't it beautiful? Well, it is beautiful because God is quite capable of making something beautiful which actually is very functional. Actually, what you're looking at is a factory. All living plants are factories, and all the algae in the sea, the purpose for them is to create oxygen and food for all living organisms. That includes humans, birds, mammals, fish, everything that has a breath of life in it needs photosynthesis, needs plants. Plants are green because they have chlorophyll in all of their cells. And what happens in the chlorophyll is absolutely stunning, amazing, and totally miraculous. Because what chlorophyll does is harness light from the sun. Light comes to planet Earth from the sun in the form of photons moving in a waveform. And what the chlorophyll does is convert carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of ours, and water in the presence of sunlight into sugar in the form of starch and oxygen. What are the two things that all living organisms need? Answer: sugar and oxygen. So all the green plants that we see all do something absolutely vital for each and every one of us. They make for us sugar and oxygen, and also they mop up something we exhale with every single breath, carbon dioxide, which is acidic. And if they didn't mop it up, if the plants and the algae in the sea didn't mop up carbon dioxide, the whole world would become far too acidic and we would all die. So plants are absolutely fantastic. But what I want to tell you is that photosynthesis is not just only amazing, there's a light and a dark form of photosynthesis, but they do it with 100% efficiency. They harness the light from the sun. Remember, the sun is 93 million miles away. It's actually a nuclear fusion factory. That's what the sun is. Every second, 600 million tons of hydrogen are converted into helium, except for 4 tons, which are converted into light, heat, and energy of different types. And that energy is mopped up, the photons moving in a waveform are mopped up in this equation called photosynthesis to create carbon dioxide, to mop up carbon dioxide and to create for us oxygen and glucose, the things we absolutely essentially need. Now, humans can't do this. I'm sure you're familiar with some people on their roofs, they have those photoelectric cells which convert sunlight into electricity. Very good idea, but do you know how efficient they are? They are 4% efficient. That's how efficient those photoelectric cells on people's roofs are. Just 4% efficient. God's plants, by comparison, are 100% efficient. The plants are very carefully made. They have little stoma, like little mouths that open and shut to let in the oxygen and let out the carbon dioxide, to let in the carbon dioxide and let out the oxygen. They are just totally miraculous. And the other thing about them is they are really, really beautiful to look at. Everything we see about God is beautiful to behold, whether it's the human form which conforms to the divine nature, the divine ratio, or whether it's the plants which are so beautiful to look at, Whatever we look at, wherever we look with our eyes and whatever we hear with our ears, the world that God has created is miraculous and beautiful. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.
Wonderful, and welcome back to The Point, and thank you so much for that interesting fun facts on photosynthesis, Richard. Now, do you want to just very briefly recap, because we're also going to go on to day 4 today?
Right, well, I'll just move straight on to the next day.
Okay, well, day 4 is God created the sun, moon, and stars on the 4th day. And if we read Genesis 1:14 to 19, it says, "Then God said, 'Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth.' And it was so. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." And this was on the 4th day, Richard. Mm-hmm. We have got fun facts as well, but do you want to talk about that before we go to the second fun facts?
Well, just to make just one point, is people do like to believe that there were millions of years between the various days. Well, the sun was created on day 4, and all the vegetation was on day 3. So there simply couldn't be a long time between day 3 and day 4. 24 hours would be all right, but plants need sunlight. That's how they work. So there can't be millions of years between day 3 and day 4, because otherwise the plants would all die. Just by that. But I think go straight on to the fun facts and talk about the sun.
That's a light bulb statement, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Bing! But absolutely awesome. So day 4, we're talking about the sun and the moon and the stars. And that's what we're going to see next. The sun. We're going to go through a fun fact on the sun.
Hello, my name's Richard Kent. Today I thought we would look at the sun. The sun, of course, is the source of all the light and energy and heat in our solar system, and the sun is completely supernatural. I don't know if you ever thought about that the sun is completely supernatural. I want to demonstrate to you that the sun truly is completely supernatural. The sun produces masses and masses of high heat, light and energy, which we need on planet Earth. Basically, we get all our oxygen and our food from the plants. The plants, in turn, use photosynthesis, which itself is completely supernatural, to produce the oxygen and the food, using the photons, the light from the sun, as the chemical part of the chemical reaction to actually produce oxygen and food for us. So let's look at this energy source, the sun. It's so bright we can't even look at it. Not for very long anyway. Otherwise we'll burn our retinas. Now the sun is 93 million miles away, and you could actually fit 1 million Earths into the sun. But the sun is absolutely amazing. In the sun there is something happening called nuclear fusion. Humans can't do nuclear fusion. We can do nuclear fission, which is a hydrogen bomb, or a nuclear reactor. It's a very messy business, is nuclear fission, because it produces atomic waste, or a hydrogen bomb. However, nuclear fusion is completely different. Every second, 600 million tons of hydrogen are converted into helium with nearly 100% efficiency, except for 4 tons every second. And that 4 tons of spare out of the 600 million tons is converted into heat, light and energy. It's amazing. The core temperature of the sun is 15 million degrees centigrade. The pressure in the center of the sun is 350 times the pressure on planet Earth. So that's one reason why we can't do it. We can't create temperatures or pressures like that. However, there are further potential problems which God has already solved. Because the energy that comes from the sun is the whole of the spectrum of light and heat. So it goes all the way from infrared to ultraviolet. We are very familiar with the visible spectrum, but of course as well there's X-rays, gamma rays, infrared and lots of other damaging rays, but God has screened them out from planet Earth, because if we travel high in the sky we can see the stratosphere, and in the stratosphere is encapsulated the ozone layer. I'm sure you've heard of the ozone layer. Well, it's absolutely essential because it screens out the dangerous gamma rays and X-rays which would damage our DNA, our deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the genetic code in all of our 100 trillion cells. If our DNA is damaged, we very quickly get cancer. That is the main cause of cancer. But God, in his wisdom, has put an ozone layer in the stratosphere so that the rays that come to planet Earth are the rays that really help us, not only light and heat, but also the all-important rays for photosynthesis, in order that we can have oxygen and food from the plants manufactured via photosynthesis. So that's just a very brief overview of the sun. Now I think you agree with me, it is absolutely mind-blowing. We very much take it for granted, but the sun is completely supernatural. Man can't even begin to do nuclear fusion. We do nuclear fission and all we get is either a hydrogen bomb, an atomic bomb, or nuclear reactors which are only 4% efficient, very inefficient, and tons of nuclear waste which we don't know what to do with. So we put it in yellow metal drums and dump it in the sea. Big difference between God and man. Anyway, thanks for listening and God bless you.
Welcome back to The Point, and thank you so much, Richard, again for that fun fact on the sun. Do you want to say just a couple more words about the sun and why it is that we're not all fried?
Well, two things I want to say about the sun, absolutely. The first thing is the evolutionists say that 13.75 billion years ago there was a big bang, and amongst other things, during planetary evolution, the sun was formed by chance, nuclear fusion by chance, and we can't even do it. With all our NASA super technology, we can't do things, but the evolutionists say that's not a problem, chance can do it. Right, okay, well, the sun is hydrogen and helium at a pressure of 360 times the pressure of planet Earth and a temperature of 15,000 degrees centigrade, which we can't get to on planet Earth because it would melt all the reactors. But anyway, despite all that, I think you'd agree with me that a bunch of school children would have a better chance than chance alone of creating the sun. So if you gave a bunch of kids that temperature and that pressure and gave them hydrogen and helium and said, go ahead and make photosynthesis, I'll tell you what's going to happen is a big explosion. But only God can do the sun. The other thing about the sun is that it gets smaller. It's burning up all the time. It gets smaller by 6 feet an hour. Now, the evolutionists say that the Big Bang happened 13.75 billion years ago. The evolutionists got a massive problem because if they extrapolate backwards, the sun is now getting smaller, but 11 million years ago, which is not very long ago in evolutionary terms, the sun would be touching the Earth, which means we'd all be fried. That's one. I'm going to do a whole series on evolution, but that is just one point about evolution.
Well, there we are, and we're certainly not fried, are we? In fact, we could do with a little bit more sun, although recently you've been on holiday with your dear wife, and you had probably a bit more sun than we did down here.
Well, you've been working in a surgery long.
Vitamin D, where are you? But we're going to move on to the 5th day, aren't we, Richard?
Well.
And the 5th day, the fish and the birds. And so we got the sea and flying creatures. And Genesis 1:20-23 says, "Then God said, Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply in the earth. And so the evening and the morning were on the 5th day. Wonderful. Richard, we have another fun facts on this, and I think, would you like us to go
Yes,
straight
go
to
straight
it?
into it.
And we'll go straight into the fun facts on the birds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Richard Kent. Today I'd like to talk about how birds navigate. It's actually a complete mystery how birds navigate, and we still don't really know, but it is truly remarkable. One of the most famous birds is the sooty shearwater, which navigates twice a year from New Zealand across the whole of the Pacific, 20,000 miles at 300 miles a day to California and Alaska and Japan. And then 6 months later comes back again, another 20,000 miles, another 300 miles a day, and navigates right back to the original nest. They have their original nests in the two different countries, whichever country they're going to. Now the question is, how do they do it? It's something absolutely extraordinary. Now, all birds use the sun. Birds are constantly aware of the position of the sun, and it doesn't matter whether it's cloudy or not, because birds see plain polarized light, which of course comes through the sun. So actually not just birds, but insects and virtually anything that flies is very aware of the position of the sun. Secondly, obviously birds will use their eyes to get visual clues of landscapes and horizons and that sort of thing. But that wouldn't get you from New Zealand to Canada or Japan or California or Alaska or anywhere like that. No, they had to have something much, much more profound than that. And what it is believed is that these amazing sooty shearwaters and also other birds that also navigate as well, that's all birds virtually, they actually use the magnetic field of the Earth. And that is truly amazing. They are actually sensitive to the magnetic field of the Earth. Now, you and I are not sensitive or even aware of the magnetic field of the Earth, but migrating birds are very aware of the magnetic field of the Earth. And they actually have iron oxide in their beaks and also in the semicircular canals in their ears. And they also have cells in the back of their retinas, which are also electronic. They're also aware of changes in magnetic fields. And these three sources of magnetic awareness from the beaks and the semicircular canals and the ears, and also the from the cells in the retina of the eyes, is fed to the brain, which then has a seriously complex task to do. Because the brain then computes the position of the sun, which is moving all the time, the position of the clouds, the position of the land below, the change in the wind, because remember, wind changes all the time, so they have to keep, just like an aeroplane, they have to keep adjusting their flight according to how much wind is going across their if they're flying from north to south and there's a west-east wind, then they'll have to adjust their flight to veer more to the west than to the east, so in order to stay on target, as it were, and keep on the right navigation field. But the thing is, their navigation isn't just a little bit right, it's 100% right. They know exactly where to go. After 20,000 miles, traveling 300 miles a day, these little birds, and they're tiny, know exactly where to go and land in the same nest year after year after year. Now, if that isn't an example of God's design built into tiny little birds, I don't know what is. That couldn't possibly evolve. How could you evolve a navigation system that involves a magnetic field? Imagine you're a bird sitting somewhere down in New Zealand and say, well, I'd like to fly to somewhere up north, let's have a go. Sorry, that's not going to work. You're going to drown on the way. No, this is an example of God's amazing intelligent design. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.
Welcome back. Thank you so much again, Richard. That was an amazing fun fact on how birds navigate and how God has built into them this sat-nav system, which we have copied in certain ways, haven't we? Yeah. Would you like to just talk a little bit more about that?
Well, actually, now, just in the last few months, they've decided that birds can actually see magnetic fields. Now, we actually see what we see, but birds can actually see magnetic fields. I don't know how they see it, and I don't know how the scientists have worked it all out, but they can actually see it. But let's move on to the next picture, which I think might be fish, and talk briefly about fish and birds. On the fifth day, God created the fish and the birds, and the myriads and myriads of fish, lovely colours. But they are very specifically designed with fish DNA. There are different species or different kinds of fish, and they all have one thing in common, or most of them, and they have a swim bladder. Now, a swim bladder, some of you may have heard of a swim bladder, it enables them, it gives them buoyancy, so that they can go up to the surface or down to the depths of the sea, just like a submarine does. However, they are in full control of how much air is in their swim bladder. They don't have to struggle to stay 6 foot below the water or 60 feet below the water. They simply regulate the pressure in their swim bladders. Now, that's what we call irreducible complexity, because a fish can't evolve a swim bladder. Either the fish has a swim bladder and can swim under the water, without doing massive orientation with its fins and expend a lot of energy, or it doesn't have a swim bladder and it'll spend all its life on the surface. So it's called irreducible complexity. So a swim bladder could not evolve. A swim bladder was designed by God to keep a fish swimming under the water without a lot of dissipation of energy. Unlike the next picture, which is birds, which are completely different. They have a very, very low body mass index. They have very, very light skeletons. Their whole bodies are very light for a very specific purpose, that they fly. They have feathers. And now we have aeroplanes that fly with propellers or jets, but they have something much more complex. They can glide and take off and land using feathers. We haven't perfected any working machine that can copy what they do using feathers. Feathers themselves are extraordinary. They're waterproof. On the downstroke, they cause compression of the air so that they rise. It gives them lift. But when the wings go down, the air flies through the airs because the little parts of the feathers separate apart. Now, again, this is called irreducible complexity. You can't, either a bird can fly or a bird cannot fly. There is no halfway. There's no halfway. Either the bird can fly and evade predators, or it can't fly, in which case it would be a land-bound bird and will almost certainly be killed off by the predators using Darwin's natural selection. Now, one thing that Darwin likes to believe in is fish changing into mammals and reptiles and birds. Let me tell you, we never see this in real life. you've never seen a fish change into a dog, you've never seen a dog change into a cat, and you have never seen a mouse change into a bird, or anything like that. In fact, you have never seen a monkey changing into a human, and you never will. And the reason is that God has given each different species or each different kind of animal, bird or fish, mammal, reptile, insect, its own specific DNA. Now, we've just got 3 minutes. I want to talk briefly about genetic mutation, because the key component in Darwin's theory of evolution is genetic mutation. Darwin's theory, having observed 14 different types of finches in the Galapagos Islands, is that the genes, or the DNA, of different animals and birds and fish and mammals mutate into different types of species. Let me tell you that is garbage of the absolute first order. And I'll tell you why I know that, and Dr. Laura knows this as well, is because Dr. Laura and I have both been practicing doctors for many years, and we're very familiar with gene mutation. Let me tell you about gene mutation. It causes cancer. Cancer is caused by gene mutation. Gene mutation is sometimes caused by chemicals, as in the case of the thalidomide disaster. Pregnant women were given thalidomide, and it caused a gene mutation which caused an absence of arms and legs. Another mutation is anencephaly, which means no head, so babies are born dead. There are lots of other genetic types. There are genetic types of gene mutation. Spina bifida is one, and actually I'm just going to put Laura on the spot and ask if you are familiar with gene mutation.
Absolutely. I mean, gene mutations cause disease, you know, whether it's sickle cell anemia or thalassemia, or as you said, even breast cancer, you know, they all are due to mutations of genes, and they don't bring life, they bring disease, and if they're not treated properly, then they can lead to death. So that's really it, isn't it? That's what gene mutation does. It doesn't progress, it causes disease.
Absolutely. So I don't think we've got very much time left.
No, we don't actually, but we've got another fun facts, another series, another program left to talk about day 6. And that's really exciting because that's when the animals and Adam and Eve were created by God. But obviously not today. We have two more programs on this probably, because we still have to talk about day 7. So we might be able to do that another program. But thanks for watching To The Point with Dr. Richard and myself. And we'll see you again for the next program, which is going to deal with day 6 of creation. God bless you.